My name is Patsy, 62 years old, and I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn at this age. I adore my grandson Tyler more than anything, but that day caught between a car accident and my son Richard's harsh words. Something inside me finally broke. What Richard didn't know was that while I was bleeding in an ambulance, my husband Walter was dancing with his mistress across town. If you're wondering how I went from doormat to standing my ground, stay with me. Before I start my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to remind family how to treat you right. I've called Millfield, Pennsylvania my home for 40 years now. It's one of those small towns where everyone knows your business before you do, but I've always found comfort in that familiarity. Walter and I moved here right after we got married young and full of dreams. We opened our hardware store from scratch, working side by side, building our life brick by brick, just like we helped our customers build their homes. 35 years of marriage. That's what I had with Walter before everything fell apart. The early years were wonderful. Weekend picnics by Crescent Lake, dancing in our living room to old records, planning our future between stolen kisses. We were that couple everyone thought would last forever. And for a while, I thought so too. Our son Richard came along 4 years into our marriage. From the moment he was born, Walter doted on him, teaching him about tools before he could even properly talk. Richard was always smart, always calculating. By third grade, he was already counting the store inventory better than our part-time staff. As the years passed, our little boy grew into an ambitious young man. College scholarships came easy to him, and he graduated with honors in accounting. That's where he met Amanda Sharp as a tack and just as pointed sometimes. I remember the day he brought her home. She assessed our modest house with those cool blue eyes like she was appraising property. But Richard looked at her like she hung the moon, so I welcomed her with open arms. They married quickly and settled just 20 minutes away. Amanda climbed the corporate law ladder while Richard built his accounting practice. When Tyler was born 8 years ago, I thought perhaps Amanda would slow down, but 3 months after his birth, she was back in the courtroom, case files stacked higher than her infant's diapers. That's when my role as grandmother transformed into something much more demanding. Mom, can you take Tyler on Mondays? Became, Mom, we need you Monday through Wednesday and occasionally Thursdays. I didn't mind at first. Tyler was a sweet baby with Richard's dark curls and the most infectious giggle. Watching him grow became the joy of my later years. Our routine settled into something comfortable. I'd pick Tyler up from school 3 days a week, help with homework, prepare dinner, and wait for either Richard or Amanda to collect him. Sometimes they'd be so late I'd have him bathed and in pajamas, half asleep on my shoulder. What I didn't realize was how gradually they began to take me for granted. The polite requests turned into expectations. The grateful smiles became brief nods. The "we appreciate you, Mom" faded into terse texts with schedule changes. But I kept showing up because that's what mothers do, right? That's what I told myself. Meanwhile, Walter and I grew increasingly distant. The man who once couldn't wait to tell me about his day began coming home later and later. Business meetings, he'd say, supplier issues, inventory problems. 20 years ago, we solved those problems together. Now he barely mentioned the store except to say he had everything under control. I first noticed the change in his habits about 2 years ago. He became protective of his phone, angling it away when I walked by. He started showering as soon as he got home, something he'd never done before. New cologne appeared in our bathroom cabinet. I found myself sniffing his shirts when he wasn't around, searching for evidence of what I already suspected but couldn't bring myself to confirm. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty. When I checked his closet, I noticed his nice blue button-down was missing, the one I'd given him for his birthday that he claimed was too fancy for hardware customers. I sat on the edge of the bed until sunrise, but when he returned at 6, I pretended to be asleep. I was 62 years old and suddenly afraid of the truth. While my marriage was quietly crumbling, Richard and Amanda's demands increased. Tyler had soccer on Tuesdays, swimming on Thursdays, piano on Fridays. Could I drive him? Could I wait during lessons? Could I make sure he practiced in between? Amanda sent detailed instructions about Tyler's nutrition restrictions that changed weekly based on whatever new parenting article she'd read. My arthritis was getting worse, especially in my hands. Some mornings I could barely grip my coffee mug, but I never told them. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want them to find someone else to care for Tyler. He was the brightness in my increasingly gray existence. Grandma, why do Mom and Dad work so much? Tyler asked me one afternoon as we baked cookies, his small fingers clumsily cutting out shapes. Because they want to give you the best life possible, sweetie, I answered automatically. But I just want them to come to my soccer games, he said, pressing the cookie cutter with such force it tore the dough. Dad promised 3 times, but he always cancels. I hugged him, then getting flour all over both of us. I'll always be there, I promised. It was a vow I intended to keep no matter what. What I didn't realize then was how that promise would be tested, or how standing by it would finally force me to stand up for myself as well. I should have seen the warning signs. They were there, flashing as brightly as hazard lights on a dark road, but I kept driving forward, eyes fixed on maintaining the peace. Walter's strange behavior became more pronounced. One evening, while paying bills, I noticed unusual charges on our credit card statement. Dinner for 2 at Riverside Bistro, a place far too fancy for Walter's usual taste. A charge from Parkview Hotel on a night he told me he was visiting his brother in Pittsburgh. When I casually mentioned these, he became defensive, claiming they were business expenses for important clients. Since when do we entertain hardware store customers at 5-star restaurants? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Times are changing, Patsy. We need to compete with the big box stores now. Customer experience matters. His explanation sounded rehearsed hollow. I nodded and said nothing more, but that night I cried in the bathroom with the shower running to mask the sound. Meanwhile, Richard and Amanda's expectations continued to increase. What started as 3 fixed days of childcare had expanded into a constantly shifting schedule of last-minute requests. One Tuesday morning, my phone rang at 7:30. Mom, Amanda has a deposition and my 9 o'clock canceled, so I'm taking an early client. Can you get Tyler to school? Richard didn't even wait for my response. His lunch is only half made, he needs his science project from the garage, and don't forget, it's crazy sock day. I had planned to finally see my doctor about the increasing pain in my hands that day, but I canceled without hesitation. Tyler needed me. When I arrived at their house, Amanda was already in her car briefcase balanced on her knee as she applied lipstick in the rearview mirror. She rolled down her window just enough to say, Tyler's being difficult today. His project's on the workbench. Make sure he wears the blue socks with dinosaurs, not the striped ones he wants. Tyler wasn't being difficult. He was just an 8-year-old boy who wanted his parents to notice him. I found him sitting on his bed, already dressed, but refusing to put on either pair of socks. Why bother with crazy sock day when nobody from my family will be there to see? He asked, eyes downcast. I sat beside him, my heart breaking a little. I'll be there, Tyler. I promised to help with the science fair setup, remember? He leaned against me, small and warm. You're always there, Grandma, but you're not on the parent volunteer list, so you don't count. His honesty stung, but he wasn't wrong. In the school's eyes, I was just the grandmother, the backup plan, the emergency contact. That afternoon, after dropping Tyler at school, I met my friend Judith for coffee. We'd been friends since our children were in kindergarten together, and she was one of the few people who told me truths I didn't always want to hear. Patsy, they're taking advantage of you, she said, bluntly stirring her latte. When was the last time you did something for yourself? I do plenty for myself, I protested weakly. Like what? Getting your hair done every 6 weeks doesn't count as self-care when you spend the whole time answering texts from Amanda about Tyler's homework. I stared into my coffee cup. They need me. They need a free nanny, and you're letting them have one. Judith reached across the table and took my hand. And what's going on with Walter? You've mentioned his late nights 3 times already. I pulled my hand back. He's busy with the store. Judith gave me that look, the one that said she knew I was lying to myself. The hardware store doesn't need midnight inventory counts, Patsy. I changed the subject, but her words lingered. That night, I found myself looking at old photo albums. There I was, in my 30s, smiling broadly at Richard's 10th birthday party. Walter had his arm around me, both of us looking at our son with such pride. When had that happiness slipped away? When had I become invisible to my own family? The next morning, I stood a little longer in front of the mirror. My silver hair was neatly styled, my clothes clean and presentable. I wasn't old, not really, just tired. tired of being needed but not seen, tired of being useful but not valued. I promised myself I would talk to Richard about establishing some boundaries, maybe suggest a fixed schedule for Tyler, perhaps even ask Walter outright about those hotel charges. But, as always, life had other plans for me, plans that would force my hand in ways I never expected. Thursday started like any other day. I woke up at 6, surprised to find Walter still home. Usually he left early on Thursdays for what he called supplier meetings. Instead, he was in the kitchen making coffee, dressed in his good slacks and that blue button-down shirt that raised my suspicions. "You look nice," I commented, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Big day," he replied vaguely. "Important dinner meeting tonight with potential investors. Don't wait up." Investors. In 35 years of running our hardware store, we'd never needed investors. But before I could question him further, he kissed my cheek and headed for the door. "Walter," I called after him, "I'm picking Tyler up from soccer practice at 4:30. Should I make dinner for just myself then?" He paused, hand on the doorknob. "Yeah, I'll grab something with the clients. Might be late, so don't worry about me." And then he was gone, the scent of his new cologne lingering in our entryway. I had a full day planned. Grocery shopping for Tyler's favorite foods, prepping dinner for him, and making sure I had all the materials for his school project due the following week. Amanda had sent me a detailed list of requirements via text, along with a reminder that Tyler needed to complete it mostly himself, though she knew I would end up helping. Translation doing most of it, while making it look like an 8-year-old's work. Around 10:30, my phone rang. It was my sister Elaine calling about our 85-year-old mother who lived with her. "Mom's blood pressure is concerning the doctor," she said without preamble. "They've adjusted her medication again. She's been asking for you." Guilt washed over me. I hadn't visited Mom in nearly 3 weeks due to my childcare responsibilities. "I'll try to come by this weekend," I promised. "Is she okay for now?" "For now." Elaine's tone carried an unspoken accusation. She was bearing the brunt of Mom's care while I was always too busy with Tyler. Another relationship strained by my inability to say no to Richard and Amanda. By 3 o'clock, I had finished my errands and was heading to the grocery store for Tyler's dinner ingredients. He had been begging for my homemade macaroni and cheese, and I wanted to surprise him. I remember checking the time repeatedly, calculating how long the shopping would take to ensure I wouldn't be late for pickup. I was driving down Maple Street just 5 blocks from the grocery store when it happened. I had a green light at the intersection with Oak Avenue. I proceeded through, already mentally listing the ingredients I needed to buy. From my right, a blue sedan ran the red light barreling toward my passenger side. Time slowed in that moment. I saw the driver looking down, probably at a phone. I heard the screech of my own brakes. I felt my car spinning as the impact shoved it across the intersection. The airbag exploded against my chest and face. Glass shattered. Metal crunched. And then stillness filled only with the hiss of radiator steam and distant shouts of witnesses. Pain bloomed across my chest where the seatbelt had restrained me. My head throbbed where it had snapped forward despite the airbag. Warm liquid trickled down my temple. Blood, I realized, distantly. "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" A young man in a green jacket appeared at my window, his face etched with concern. "Yes." I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "I'm okay." I wasn't, but in that moment, only one thought consumed me: Tyler. I needed to pick up Tyler. I fumbled for my phone, but my hands were shaking too badly to grip it properly. The young man helped me, handing it to me after retrieving it from the floor of the passenger side. "I need to call my husband," I told him, wincing as pain shot through my ribs when I tried to move. "My grandson. I'm supposed to pick him up." Within minutes, police and ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. An officer took statements from witnesses while paramedics gently assessed my injuries. Possible concussion, bruised ribs, laceration to the right temple. One reported to his colleague, "BP elevated pulse rapid." "I need to make a call," I insisted, growing more frantic. "My grandson is waiting for me." The female paramedic nodded sympathetically. "Let's get you stabilized first, then you can make all the calls you need." I tried Walter's number while they fitted a neck brace as a precaution. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. Where was he? Not at a supplier meeting, that much I knew instinctively. With trembling fingers, I dialed Richard's office number. His secretary answered. "It's an emergency," I told her. "I need to speak to my son immediately." There was a pause, murmured conversation, then Richard's clipped voice. "Mom, I'm with a client. Can it wait?" "I've been in a car accident," I said as the paramedics began transferring me to a stretcher. "I can't pick up Tyler from soccer." There was silence, and for a moment I thought he'd hang up. Then, "Are you serious? His practice ends in 20 minutes. Amanda's in court all afternoon." No concern about my condition, no questions about the accident, just irritation about the inconvenience. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears welling up. "They're taking me to the hospital. I tried reaching your father, but he's not answering." Richard sighed heavily. "Fine. I'll have to reschedule my 4:30. Is your car drivable at least?" The paramedic overhearing this conversation gave me a look of disbelief. She took the phone gently from my hand. "Sir, your mother has been in a serious collision. She's sustained injuries that require immediate medical attention. Her vehicle is not drivable." Her professional tone held barely concealed judgment. I couldn't hear Richard's response, but when she handed the phone back, his voice had shifted to businesslike efficiency. "I'll handle Tyler. Which hospital are they taking you to?" "Millfield General." I answered, relief mixing with hurt at his callous reaction. "I'll be there when I can," he said, then hung up. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I made one more attempt to reach Walter. Again, voicemail. What important meeting could possibly make him unreachable in an emergency? The paramedic secured the stretcher. "Family?" she asked, nodding at my phone. "Husband," I replied. "He's in a meeting." She patted my arm gently. "We'll try again at the hospital. Right now, let's focus on you." As the ambulance doors closed and we pulled away, sirens blaring, I closed my eyes against the bright lights and the even more painful reality. In my moment of crisis, I was alone. My husband was unreachable. My son was annoyed rather than concerned. And somehow, I was still worrying about whether Tyler would get his favorite macaroni and cheese for dinner. The accident had injured my body, but my family's response was wounding my heart far more deeply. The emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos around me as doctors assessed the damage from my accident. X-rays confirmed 2 bruised ribs, no fractures. The cut on my temple required 7 stitches. Mild whiplash meant a neck brace for at least a week. The doctor was particularly concerned about signs of concussion and wanted to monitor me for a few hours. "Is someone coming to be with you, Mrs. Lawrence?" the doctor asked while checking my pupil response. "My son." I answered, though I was beginning to wonder if Richard would actually show. I'd been in the hospital for nearly 2 hours and still no sign of him. Walter remained unreachable. A police officer stopped by to take my official statement about the accident. The driver who hit me had been texting, he informed me. She was uninjured but deeply apologetic and had already admitted fault to her insurance company. It was a small comfort amid the physical pain and emotional turmoil. "You were very lucky," the officer said. "That type of T-bone collision can often be fatal." Lucky. The word echoed hollowly as I lay there still trying repeatedly to reach my husband. What kind of luck left a 62-year-old grandmother injured and alone in a hospital bed? The nurse, Barbara, according to her name tag, noticed my increasing distress as the 3rd hour began with no family in sight. She brought me a cup of tea and stayed to chat during her break. "First thing my husband would have done is rush to the hospital," she commented, adjusting my pillows. 37 years married, and he still treats me like his bride. She wasn't trying to be unkind, just making conversation, but her words stung. "Mine too," I lied, "but he's out of cell range at a business meeting." Barbara nodded sympathetically. "And your son is on his way." Before I could answer, a commotion at the nurse's station caught our attention. Richard's voice, loud and demanding, rose above the hospital's steady hum. "My mother, Patsy Lawrence. She was brought in after a car accident. Which room?" Barbara excused herself to intercept him, and moments later, Richard appeared in my doorway. His expression wasn't relief or concern, but something closer to annoyance. He was still in his business suit, tie, loosened hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it, the way he did when frustrated. "Finally found you," he said, as if I'd intentionally hidden myself. Tyler's with my neighbor for now, but she can only watch him until 6. Hello to you too, Richard, I said quietly. The doctor says I have a concussion, bruised ribs, and whiplash. He glanced at the monitors beside my bed, then at his watch. How long will they keep you? Can you be discharged soon? I stared at my son, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time in years. This man who had once brought me dandelions from the yard to make you smile, Mommy, now couldn't spare a moment of genuine concern for my well-being. I could have died today, Richard, I said, my voice trembling. That's what the police officer told me. The impact was that severe. He had the grace to look momentarily chastened. But you didn't, and that's good, Mom. I'm glad you're okay. He checked his watch again. Have you reached Dad yet? I tried calling him on my way here. No, straight to voicemail. Just like the past 3 years of our marriage, I replied with unexpected bitterness. Richard frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could respond, he continued, Look, this is incredibly inconvenient timing. Amanda's in court until 7. I have clients scheduled back to back, and now we have to figure out Tyler's pickup situation for tomorrow since you obviously can't drive. Something inside me snapped then. Perhaps it was the concussion loosening my usual restraint. Maybe it was the pain medication providing a momentary courage. Or possibly it was simply 39 years of maternal sacrifice reaching its breaking point. Inconvenient timing, I repeated, my voice rising. I'm so sorry my car accident interrupted your busy schedule, Richard. Next time, I'll try to arrange for someone to crash into me on a weekend. His eyes widened. Mom, that's not what I meant. I'm just trying to figure things out. No, you're not, I countered, sitting up despite the pain in my ribs. You're upset that your free childcare service is temporarily unavailable. Not once have you asked how I feel or if there's anything you can do for me. Richard's face flushed. That's not fair. We're grateful for all you do with Tyler. Are you? Because from where I'm lying with 7 stitches in my head and ribs that feel like they're on fire, it seems like you and Amanda see me as nothing more than convenient babysitting. The nurse hovering nearby pretended to adjust my IV, but I could tell she was listening intently, perhaps ready to intervene if needed. Richard's expression hardened. You're being dramatic. We've always appreciated your help. When was the last time you said thank you? I challenged. When was the last time you didn't just expect me to rearrange my life at a moment's notice for Tyler? I love that boy with all my heart, but I am not your employee, Richard. I'm your mother. If it's such a burden, then maybe we should make other arrangements, he shot back. There are plenty of after-school programs that would provide more reliable care. His words cut deeper than the glass from the shattered car window. More reliable, I have never once let you down until today when a distracted driver ran a red light and hit my car. And your first concern was still not for me, but for the inconvenience to your schedule. We stared at each other across a chasm that seemed to widen with each passing second. The son I had raised, the man I had poured my life into, looked at me as if I were a stranger making unreasonable demands. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. It's Amanda. I need to take this. Of course you do, I said quietly. As he stepped into the hallway, I heard his side of the conversation. No, she can't. Bruised ribs or something. I know it's a problem. We'll figure it out. Can you call the Briggs kid down the street? Yeah, I'm at the hospital now, but leaving soon. The nurse Barbara returned with my discharge papers. Your son seems, she paused diplomatically, concerned about logistics. I attempted a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. That's Richard, always practical. And your husband, still unreachable. I sighed. Could you help me sit up more? I need to figure out how I'm getting home. Barbara assisted me, her hands gentle, but her eyes sharp with observation. Your son isn't taking you. Before I could answer, Richard returned phone in hand. Amanda's arranged for Mrs. Briggs to watch Tyler tonight. I've got to get back to the office for my 5:30 client. So who's taking me home? I asked, already knowing the answer. He at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. I can call you a taxi or an Uber, Barbara interjected, her professional tone carrying an edge. Sir, your mother has a concussion. She shouldn't be alone tonight. Someone needs to monitor her condition. Richard looked trapped between obligation and inconvenience. He checked his phone again. I'll call Dad again. Maybe he's done with his meeting by now. As he stepped away to make the call, Barbara leaned close to me. Honey, is there someone else I can call for you? A friend? Another family member? I thought about it. Judith would come in a heartbeat. My sister Elaine would too, though she was already caring for our mother. The realization that I had people who would drop everything for me, none of whom shared my last name, was both comforting and devastating. Richard returned, frustration evident. Still no answer from Dad. This is ridiculous. Where could he be? With his mistress, probably. I replied, the words escaping before I could stop them. Richard's head snapped up. What did you just say? I hadn't meant to reveal my suspicions, especially not in a hospital room with my son looking at me as if I'd lost my mind. But the day's events had stripped away my usual filters. Your father has been having an affair, Richard. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained hotel charges. I'm not stupid, just patient. Perhaps too patient. Richard stared at me, then shook his head dismissively. You're confused from the concussion. Dad wouldn't do that. Like you wouldn't leave your injured mother to return to work, I asked quietly. The silence between us stretched taut with unspoken accusations and realizations. Finally, Richard spoke. I'll take you home and get you settled. My client can wait 30 minutes. It wasn't the response I wanted, but it was the best I was going to get. As Barbara helped me into the wheelchair hospital policy required for discharge, I realized something had fundamentally changed. The accident hadn't just broken my car and bruised my body. It had shattered the illusion that my sacrifices for my family were appreciated or even acknowledged. Now I had to decide what to do with the broken pieces. I expected to feel relief when Judith picked me up from my empty house that evening, but what I felt was closer to resignation. Richard had dropped me off with mechanical efficiency, ensuring I had my medication and a phone within reach before rushing back to his waiting client. Walter still wasn't answering his phone. The house echoed with silence as I sat on the edge of our bed, unable to lie down comfortably with my bruised ribs. You're staying with me tonight, Judith had insisted when I called her. Doctor's orders. Someone needs to wake you every few hours with that concussion. I didn't argue. The thought of facing Walter when he eventually returned, of pretending I didn't know what had kept him unreachable all day, was too exhausting to contemplate. Judith arrived within 20 minutes, her expression shifting from concern to anger as she took in my injuries. Where the hell is Walter? She demanded while helping me pack an overnight bag. Business dinner, I replied, wincing as I reached for my toiletries. Judith snorted. And I'm the Queen of England. In the safety of Judith's guest room with a cup of chamomile tea and pain medication, dulling the worst of my discomfort, I finally allowed myself to acknowledge the truth I'd been avoiding for months, perhaps years. Walter's having an affair, I stated flatly, and Richard sees me as nothing more than free childcare. Judith didn't look surprised. She sat at the foot of the bed, her face compassionate but not pitying. What are you going to do about it? It was such a simple question, yet it struck me that no one had asked me about my own agency in years. What did I want? What actions would I take? I'd become so accustomed to reacting to others' needs that I'd forgotten I had choices of my own. I don't know, I admitted. Confront Walter, I suppose. Judith leaned forward. Patsy Lawrence, I have known you for 30 years, and in all that time, I have never seen you put yourself first. Not once. You've been the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother. And where has it gotten you alone in a hospital after a car accident while your husband is God knows where and your son is worried about rescheduling his client? Her words stung because they were true. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop being a doormat, she said bluntly. Starting tonight. I blinked at her pain medication, making her appear slightly blurry. Tonight, Walter told you he had a business dinner, right, with investors. Judith pulled out her phone. Where? The Grand Bistro downtown. I replied the words, feeling thick in my mouth. But I can't confront him tonight, Judith. Look at me. She was already scrolling through her contacts. My nephew works as a sous chef there. Let me check if there's a reservation under Lawrence. She made a quick call, exchanged pleasantries, then asked her question. Her eyebrows shot up at the response. Thanks, Kevin. I owe you one. She hung up and looked at me gravely. Reservation for 2 at 7:30, Walter Lawrence and guest. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. Suspicion was one thing. Confirmation was another entirely. It could be a business dinner, I said weakly. Then let's find out, Judith replied, standing up. The Grand Bistro has that big window facing the street. We can drive by, no confrontation necessary. If it's a business dinner, fine. If not, the idea was simultaneously terrifying and compelling. Part of me didn't want to know for certain, preferred the comfort of plausible deniability. But another part, a part awakened by today's events, needed the truth, regardless of how painful. I look terrible, I protested, gesturing to my stitched temple and neck brace. Good, Judith said firmly. Let him see what he missed while he was otherwise occupied. 30 minutes later, we were parked across from the Grand Bistro, its elegant facade glowing warmly in the early evening light. The large picture windows offered a clear view of the dining room and the small dance floor where the restaurant hosted live music on Thursday nights. There, Judith pointed, and my heart contracted painfully. Walter sat at a corner table dressed in his blue button-down shirt, leaning intimately toward a woman I didn't recognize. She was perhaps in her mid-40s, attractive in a polished way with dark hair styled in a sleek bob. As I watched, she laughed at something Walter said, touching his hand with casual familiarity. Do you recognize her? Judith asked softly. I shook my head, unable to speak. The sight of my husband of 35 years gazing at another woman with such open adoration made the pain of my physical injuries seem trivial by comparison. As we sat there, a small jazz quartet began setting up on the restaurant's small stage. The woman said something to Walter, and he nodded eagerly. Within moments, they had moved to the dance floor, where Walter took her in his arms with practiced ease. They moved together, fluidly, bodies aligned in a way that spoke of physical familiarity. Walter had claimed for years that dancing hurt his back, refusing my requests at every wedding or party we attended. Yet here he was, twirling this stranger effortlessly, his face alight with a joy I hadn't seen in years. That's enough, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Take me back to your place. But Judith was already opening her car door. No, absolutely not. You are going in there. Judith, I can't. Not like this. I gestured to my injuries, my disheveled appearance. Exactly like this, she insisted. Let him see what he missed while he was dancing with his girlfriend. Let him explain why he was unreachable when his wife of 35 years was in an ambulance. Something in her fierce loyalty broke through my hesitation. She was right. I deserved answers, not more evasions. With Judith supporting my elbow, I made my way slowly across the street and into the Grand Bistro. The maitre d' looked alarmed at my appearance. Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need medical assistance? I need to speak with my husband, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. Walter Lawrence, he's on the dance floor. The young man glanced uncertainly at the couple dancing, then back at me. Recognition dawned in his eyes. Mrs. Lawrence, of course. Would you like me to get him for you? No need, I said, already moving past him. I can manage. The restaurant wasn't crowded on a Thursday evening, allowing me a clear path to the dance floor. A few diners glanced up curiously as I passed, some expressions shifting to concern when they noticed my injuries. I ignored them all, focused entirely on the man who had pledged to love me in sickness and in health, yet couldn't be bothered to answer his phone when I needed him most. I stopped at the edge of the dance floor. Walter had his back to me, still oblivious to my presence. The woman saw me first, her eyes widening as she peered over Walter's shoulder. She faltered mid-step, causing Walter to turn around. The color drained from his face. Patsy, what happened? Are you okay? His concern might have seemed genuine if not for the hand still resting possessively on the other woman's waist. No, Walter, I am very far from okay, I replied, my voice carrying in the suddenly quiet restaurant. I was in a car accident today. Quite serious, according to the police. The hospital tried to reach you. Richard tried to reach you. I tried to reach you. He dropped his hand from the woman's waist, taking a step toward me. My phone was off during my meeting. I only just turned it back on and saw the missed calls. I was about to call you back. Your meeting, I repeated, glancing meaningfully at his companion. Is this one of our investors, Walter? Or perhaps a hardware supplier? The woman had the grace to look uncomfortable. She was pretty in an artificial way with carefully applied makeup that couldn't quite hide the fact that she was trying too hard to look younger than her years. Patsy, this isn't what it looks like. Walter began, using the same tone he'd used when trying to explain those hotel charges. It looks like my husband of 35 years is dancing with another woman while I sit in an emergency room with a concussion and bruised ribs, I stated calmly. It looks like you've been lying to me for months, possibly years. Walter's expression shifted from shock to defensive anger. You're making a scene, Patsy. Let's discuss this at home. I'm not going home, Walter. Not tonight. I turned to the woman who was now staring at her expensive shoes. Does he call you during our Sunday family dinners? Does he tell you he has to step away to take an important call, then whispers to you from our back porch while I serve dessert to our grandson? Patsy, stop it, Walter hissed. Denise has nothing to do with our problems. Denise, I repeated, finally having a name to attach to the phantom who had been haunting my marriage. How long, Walter? He glanced around at the other diners, many of whom were watching our exchange with undisguised interest. This isn't the place. How long? I repeated louder this time. Denise finally spoke, her voice surprisingly deep and raspy. I think I should go. She reached for her purse on a nearby chair. No, please, stay, I said with artificial politeness. I'd like to know how long my husband has been cheating on me with you. Walter's face had gone from pale to red. 14 months, he admitted through gritted teeth. But our marriage was already over in all but name, Patsy. You know that. His words hit me like a second car crash. 14 months. Over a year of lies of coming home to me after being with her. Over a year of me doing his laundry, cooking his meals, maintaining our life, while he built a separate one with this woman. Did you know he was married? I asked Denise directly. She nodded reluctantly. He said you had an understanding. I laughed, a harsh sound that hurt my bruised ribs. Our understanding was 35 years of marriage, a son, a grandson, and a lifetime of memories. What was your understanding, Walter? That I was too stupid to notice, or that I was so desperate to keep our family intact that I'd look the other way forever. You were always so busy with Richard and Tyler, he countered defensively. It's like I didn't even exist in your world anymore. So, rather than talk to me about feeling neglected, you found someone else. I shook my head, wincing as the movement aggravated my whiplash. You're a coward, Walter Lawrence. Denise was edging toward the exit, now clearly eager to escape the public spectacle. Walter noticed and called after her. Denise, wait. Choose right now, Walter, I said, my voice cutting through the hushed restaurant. Are you leaving with her, or are you coming home to help your injured wife? Walter looked between us, trapped in the consequences of his own actions. Patsy, be reasonable. You're upset and hurt. Let me take you home and we can talk about this tomorrow when you're calmer. That's not a choice, I observed. That's a postponement. I turned to Denise, who had paused by the door. He won't choose Denise. Not really. He wants us both on his terms. Something passed between us then, a moment of female solidarity that transcended our adversarial positions. She nodded slightly, understanding dawning in her eyes. I deserve better than being someone's secret, she said, more to herself than to us, and walked out the door. Walter watched her go, genuine anguish on his face. It was the most honest emotion I'd seen from him in years, and it wasn't directed at me. I'm staying at Judith's tonight, I told him, suddenly exhausted. I'll be by tomorrow to pack some things. You can have the house to yourself to think about what you want, Walter. But understand this, I will not be your backup plan. I will not be your convenient wife while you build a life with someone else. I turned to leave, then paused, looking back at the man I had loved for most of my adult life. And Walter, when your son calls to yell at you for being unreachable during a family emergency, you can explain to him exactly what was more important than your injured wife. With that, I walked out, Judith's supportive arm around my waist. For the first time that terrible day, despite my physical pain and emotional devastation, I felt a glimmer of something unexpected: freedom. The first few days at Elaine's house passed in a blur of pain, medication, fitful sleep, and periods of intense clarity where the full impact of my situation would hit me like waves against a shore. My sister had immediately offered her home when Judith explained what had happened, setting up her guest room with extra pillows to support my injured ribs and checking on me throughout the night as the concussion protocol required. I always thought Walter was too smooth by half, Elaine commented while changing the dressing on my temple stitches. Mom never liked him either. You could have mentioned that 36 years ago, I replied, dryly. Elaine's expression softened. Would you have listened? We were so in love. She was right. I had been blindly, foolishly in love with Walter Lawrence from the moment he asked me to dance at our friend's wedding. Perhaps I had remained blind by choice, even as evidence of his infidelity mounted. It was easier to pretend everything was fine than to confront the possibility that 3 decades of marriage could end with such a whimper. Walter called repeatedly that first day, his voicemails shifting from defensive, "You embarrassed me in public," to placating, "We need to talk about this like adults," to seemingly contrite, "I never meant to hurt you." I listened to each one, then deleted them without responding. Richard, however, maintained radio silence. No calls to check on my recovery. No texts asking if I needed anything. His absence spoke volumes about where I ranked in his priorities now that I was temporarily unavailable for childcare. On the third day, as I sat in Elaine's sunroom trying to find a position that didn't aggravate my ribs, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Grandma," Tyler's small voice came through the line. "Are you okay? Dad said you had an accident." Tears sprang to my eyes at the genuine concern in his voice, the first I'd received from any Lawrence man. "I'm a little banged up, sweetheart, but I'll be fine. I'm staying with your great-aunt Elaine for a while. Dad wouldn't tell me what happened. He just said you can't pick me up from school anymore." His voice quivered slightly. "Are you mad at me?" "Oh, Tyler, no, never," I reassured him quickly. "I love you very much. I just need some time to heal." "When are you coming back?" he asked. "Mrs. Briggs is nice, but she doesn't make mac and cheese like you do, and she doesn't know how to help with my science project." I swallowed hard. "I'm not sure yet, sweetie, but maybe you can come visit me here once I'm feeling better." "I can come now," he said with a child's simple logic. "I can be really quiet if you need to rest." Before I could respond, I heard a commotion in the background, followed by Amanda's sharp voice. "Tyler Jackson Lawrence. Whose phone are you using?" "Gotta go, Grandma," Tyler whispered hurriedly. "I took Mom's phone when she was in the shower. Don't tell." The line went dead, leaving me clutching my phone heart, aching for the innocent boy caught in the middle of adult complications. I missed him fiercely, his curious questions, his gap-toothed smile, the way he leaned against me while we read stories together. Less than an hour later, my doorbell rang. Elaine answered it, and I heard Amanda's strident voice from the entryway. "I need to speak with Patsy. Now." Elaine appeared in the sunroom doorway, eyebrows raised in silent question. I nodded, bracing myself. Amanda strode in, impeccably dressed, as always, in a tailored pantsuit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like she had come straight from court. Tyler hovered uncertainly behind her until she gestured sharply for him to sit in the corner with his tablet. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she demanded without preamble. "Tyler stole my phone to call you. He's been impossible since Richard told him you wouldn't be picking him up anymore." I straightened as much as my injuries allowed, refusing to be intimidated in my vulnerable state. "Hello to you too, Amanda. As you can see, I'm recovering from a car accident. How thoughtful of you to check on me." She had the grace to look momentarily discomfited, taking in my neck brace and the visible stitches on my temple. "Yes, well, I hope you're feeling better soon, but that doesn't explain why you've been ignoring Richard's calls and texts." "I haven't received any calls or texts from Richard," I replied evenly. "Not since he dropped me off at home after the hospital, more concerned about getting back to his client than his injured mother." Amanda's perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together. "He said he's been trying to reach you to arrange pickup schedules for Tyler." I held up my phone. "Not a single message, but I'm not surprised. Richard made it quite clear at the hospital that my accident was primarily an inconvenience to your schedules." Tyler looked up from his tablet, his young face troubled by the tension between us. "Mom, is Grandma coming home soon?" Amanda shot him a warning look. "Tyler, adults are talking. Use your headphones." I leaned forward despite the pain it caused. "To answer your question, Amanda, I'm not ignoring anyone. I'm taking time to recover both physically and emotionally. While I was being treated in the emergency room, I discovered that Walter has been having an affair for over a year. So forgive me if childcare arrangements haven't been my top priority." Her expression shifted from annoyance to something more complex. "Walter's having an affair." For the first time, she seemed to see me as a person rather than a convenience. I had no idea. "Neither did I replied with a bitter smile. Not officially, anyway, though perhaps I should have given how unreachable he was when I was in the ambulance. Amanda sat down across from me momentarily, at a loss for words. Tyler, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, abandoned his tablet and came to stand beside me. "Does it hurt?" he asked, pointing to my stitches. "A little," I admitted, "but I'm getting better every day." He leaned against my arm carefully, as if afraid of causing more pain. "I miss you, Grandma." Amanda watched this exchange, something softening in her expression. "Tyler has been asking about you constantly," she admitted. "Nothing we say seems to reassure him." I put my arm around my grandson, feeling the small, warm weight of him against my side. "I miss you too, Tyler, very much." "Then why can't you come home?" he asked plaintively. "Or at least pick me up from school again?" Amanda and I exchanged glances over his head, a rare moment of adult understanding passing between us. "Grandma needs time to get better," Amanda explained with unexpected gentleness. "And there are some grown-up problems that need to be sorted out." "Between Grandma and Grandpa?" Tyler asked perceptively. "Yes," I confirmed. "And also between Grandma and your dad." Amanda looked surprised at this. "What happened with Richard?" I hesitated, not wanting to criticize her husband in front of their son, but needing to speak my truth. When I was in the emergency room, Richard was more concerned about the inconvenience to his schedule than about my injuries. It hurt me deeply. Amanda had the surprising grace to look embarrassed. "Richard can be focused on practicalities sometimes. He called my car accident incredibly inconvenient timing," I quoted, "and was more worried about finding replacement childcare than whether his mother might have been seriously injured." Tyler frowned. "Dad said you were just a little hurt and making a big fuss." The innocent repetition of what had clearly been said behind closed doors stung worse than my physical injuries. Amanda shot Tyler a warning look, but the damage was done. "Is that what your father thinks? That I'm making a big fuss?" I asked, working to keep my voice steady. "Richard has been under a lot of pressure with the Westfield account," Amanda said defensively. "He didn't mean it the way it sounded." I looked at her directly. "Do you believe that, Amanda? Because from where I'm sitting with 2 bruised ribs and a concussion, it seems like both you and Richard have taken my availability for granted for years. I love Tyler with all my heart, but I'm not your employee. I'm a person with my own life and needs." Amanda's professional facade cracked further. She glanced at Tyler, then back at me. "Could Tyler go help your sister in the kitchen for a few minutes? I think we need to talk privately." After Tyler reluctantly left, bribed with the promise of cookies from Elaine, Amanda's composed expression collapsed entirely. "Everything's falling apart," she admitted, running a hand over her immaculate hair. "The Briggs girl can only help until 6. The after-school program has a waiting list, and the agency sitters cost a fortune. Richard's working late every night on this Westfield deal, and I have 3 cases going to trial in the next month." For the first time, I saw beyond Amanda's cold efficiency to the overwhelmed working mother beneath. "It's not easy juggling everything," I acknowledged. "No, it's not," she agreed, then added with visible effort. "And I suppose we have been taking advantage of your willingness to help." It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from my proud daughter-in-law. "Yes, you have," I said simply. "And it needs to stop." She looked startled. "You won't help with Tyler anymore." I didn't say that. I said the taking advantage needs to stop. If I continue to help with Tyler, it will be on terms that respect my time and energy. No more last-minute demands, no more expectation that I'll rearrange my life at a moment's notice, and definitely no more treating me as if my only value is free childcare. Amanda studied me with new eyes, perhaps seeing for the first time the steel beneath my accommodating exterior. "That seems reasonable," she conceded, "though the logistics will be challenging." "Life often is," I replied, "but right now I need to focus on healing and deciding what to do about Walter. And, yes, establishing healthier boundaries with you and Richard as well." Amanda nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I am sorry about your accident, and about Walter's situation." She stood smoothing her already perfect suit. "Should I leave Tyler here for a little while? He's been desperate to see you, and it might give you 2 some time together." Her unexpected offer touched me. "I'd like that, thank you." After she left, promising to return in 2 hours, Tyler and I sat together in the sunroom. He showed me his latest drawings, told me about school, and carefully avoided mentioning the tension between the adults in his life. As he leaned against me, content simply to be in my presence, I realized something important in trying to be everything to everyone. I had lost sight of what mattered most. Not being a perfect wife or an always available grandmother, but being authentic in my relationships, even when that meant saying no or standing up for myself. The accident had broken more than my car and bruised more than my ribs. It had shattered the comfortable illusions I had maintained about my marriage and my role in my family. But as Tyler's small hand slipped into mine, I understood that from these broken pieces, I might yet build something stronger, truer, and ultimately more fulfilling than what I had lost. The next few months brought changes I never could have imagined when I woke up that fateful Thursday morning. 6 months after the accident that had literally and figuratively crashed into my carefully constructed life, I stood in the center of my new apartment, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked, but already feeling more at home than I had in years. The sunshine streamed through uncurtained windows, highlighting the fresh paint I'd chosen myself, a warm butter yellow rather than the beige Walter had always insisted upon. The space was small compared to the house we'd shared for decades, but it was mine alone. Every decision, from the blue sofa to the flowering plants on the balcony, reflecting my tastes rather than a compromise. The divorce proceedings had been surprisingly straightforward once Walter realized I wouldn't be swayed by his belated attempts at reconciliation. After his mistress Denise left him, apparently being publicly exposed as the other woman, had soured her on the relationship, Walter had launched a campaign to win me back. Flowers delivered to Elaine's house, handwritten letters recounting our happy memories, even a desperate appearance on my doorstep in the rain like a scene from one of those romantic movies I used to cry over. But something had hardened inside me, a protective shell around the wounded heart that had loved him for so long. I found myself immune to his pleas, seeing them for what they were. Not love, but fear of change and loneliness. "You don't want me back, Walter," I told him during our final conversation before signing the divorce papers. "You want the comfort and stability I provided. There's a difference." The financial settlement had been fair, largely thanks to the sharp-eyed divorce attorney Judith had recommended. After 35 years of marriage and decades of working alongside Walter in our hardware business, I was entitled to half of everything, including, much to Walter's dismay, a significant portion of the business he'd increasingly treated as his personal domain. "You can buy out my share," I'd offered reasonably, at full market value. He'd balked at first, trying to argue that his sweat equity in recent years diminished my claim. My attorney had simply pulled out records showing my name on the original business loan, the incorporation papers, and decades of tax returns listing me as co-partner. Walter paid, though not without bitterness. The resulting settlement, combined with half of our retirement savings and investments, gave me the financial independence I hadn't realized I'd been missing all these years. The freedom to choose based on desire rather than necessity was intoxicating. My relationship with Richard had undergone its own transformation, painful but necessary. For weeks after my confrontation with Amanda, he maintained his distance, apparently offended by my standing up for myself. The silence between us stretched through missed Sunday dinners and Tyler's soccer games that I attended independently, sitting apart from Richard and Amanda on the metal bleachers. It was Walter who finally forced the issue, calling Richard in my presence during one of our property division meetings. "Your mother is being completely unreasonable," he complained into the speakerphone. "She's demanding half of everything, including the business." Richard's sigh was audible through the phone. "What do you expect, Dad? You cheated on her for over a year, then couldn't be bothered to answer your phone when she was in an accident. You're lucky she's only asking for half." The unexpected defense from my son left both Walter and me momentarily speechless. Richard continued, his voice uncharacteristically reflective. "And while we're on the subject of taking Mom for granted, I owe her an apology too. We've been struggling without your help, Mom, and it's made me realize how much we depended on you. Too much, and without proper appreciation." It wasn't a complete transformation. Richard remained. Richard practical, sometimes distant, forever juggling too many responsibilities. But something had shifted between us, a new respect emerging from the wreckage of our previous dynamics. He began calling weekly, asking genuinely about my well-being, rather than just my availability. Amanda, too, made efforts inviting me for actual family dinners, rather than just childcare handoffs. My relationship with Tyler remained the brightest spot in my new life. Freed from the role of default caregiver, I could be simply his grandmother, focusing on quality time rather than logistics. We established a regular Saturday morning ritual breakfast at the local diner, followed by an activity of his choosing. Sometimes it was the science museum, other times the park or library. What mattered was the connection between us, unencumbered by the resentments and expectations that had clouded my relationships with his parents. "I like it better this way," Tyler confided during one of our outings, licking ice cream from his spoon. "You're happier now, Grandma." "Am I?" I asked, surprised by his perception. He nodded with the certainty of childhood. "You smile more, and you laugh louder." He was right, I realized. The weight of trying to be everything to everyone had been lifted. In its place was a lightness I hadn't felt in decades. My new life extended beyond family boundaries as well. I reconnected with old friends like Judith, whose unwavering support had been my lifeline in those early dark days. I made new friends too, joining an art class at the community center where I discovered a passion for watercolors I never knew I possessed. My paintings weren't particularly good, but the joy of creating something uniquely mine was reward enough. I began volunteering at the local literacy center, helping adults learn to read. The work was challenging, but deeply satisfying, reminding me that I had value beyond my roles as wife, mother, and grandmother. And then there was Jerome, the literacy center's director, a widower with kind eyes and a gentle manner. Our friendship had evolved slowly into something more cautious. Coffees becoming lingering lunches, conversations extending beyond books and students to personal histories and quiet hopes for the future. At 62, I found myself dating again, experiencing the butterflies and anticipation I thought belonged only to the young. Jerome treated me with a respect and attentiveness that highlighted all that had been missing in my marriage to Walter. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. He remembered my preferences without prompting. Most importantly, he saw me as a whole person, not an extension of himself or a means to an end. "You deserve this happiness," Elaine told me, when I confessed my feelings for Jerome, half embarrassed by the schoolgirl giddiness that overtook me whenever his name appeared on my phone. "After everything you've been through, you deserve someone who sees your worth." The accident that had initially seemed like the worst day of my life had ultimately become the catalyst for its improvement. Sometimes it takes being broken to discover your own strength. Sometimes you need to lose what you thought you wanted to find, what you truly need. As I unpacked books in my new apartment that afternoon, I came across an old photo album. Inside were snapshots of my former life, Walter and me on our wedding day, Richard's childhood milestones, family vacations and celebrations. For a moment, melancholy threatened to overtake me. So much history, so many shared experiences, all culminating in betrayal and disappointment. Then my phone chimed with a text from Jerome asking if I was free for dinner that evening. Another message followed from Tyler, a photo of the A he'd received on his science project with the caption, "Couldn't have done it without your help, Grandma." A third notification appeared in email confirming my registration for a weekend watercolor workshop I'd been excited to attend. I closed the album gently and placed it on a shelf. Those memories would always be part of me, but they no longer defined me. The painful lessons I'd learned through Walter's betrayal and Richard's thoughtlessness had ultimately led me to this new chapter, one written entirely in my own hand. The accident had indeed changed everything, but not in the way I had initially feared. It had forced me to recognize my own worth when those closest to me had failed to do so. It had compelled me to establish boundaries I should have set years ago. Most importantly, it had shown me that it's never too late to begin again, to prioritize your own happiness and well-being. I placed the last of my books on the shelf and stepped back to admire my new space, the physical manifestation of my emotional journey. Sunlight caught the watercolor I'd painted of Tyler displayed prominently on the wall. In the kitchen, dinner preparations awaited for Jerome's visit. On the coffee table, brochures for a weekend getaway with Judith and other friends beckoned with new possibilities. This was not the life I had planned, but it was undeniably mine, rich with authentic connections, newfound passions, and hard won wisdom. The path forward wasn't always clear or easy, but for the first time in decades, I was walking it on my own terms, grateful for the accident that had ultimately set me free. Have you ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more of my journey. And remember, it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve, even from those you love most. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to honor yourself in all your relationships.